I'd like to start off with a few rules before we get into it thoroughly. I'm just looking for, okay. So, could I ask that you please ensure that you are on mute throughout the entire duration of the call? We have got 5 guests on the call with myself, and that's 6. So those should be the only people who are going on and off mute. And obviously this is to stop any type of background noise from interrupting. I will also ask that if you are not a guest or on the panel, that you put your videos off, and this is just for connectivity purposes and to help people to focus better. Some people get distracted very quickly. I'm one of them, okay? I'm going to ask also that if you've got any questions, please type them out in the chat section. I will pick them up and I will then ask the necessary person or the relevant person on my panel to answer your question for you. And because of the fact that HR is such a broad discipline, we will not be covering the entire aspect of HR. So we'll just be focusing on the importance of human capital in an organization or in the agencies. So if there's any questions that you put in the chat section that I do not pick up or I do not ask, please understand that it probably does not have anything to do with the topic today. However, I will take those questions, and because there will be more human capital webinars in future, I will include those questions in the future webinars where it does, where it matters. So please don't feel left out. Don't feel like I am leaving you out. No, it's not that. I have to keep to what we are discussing today so that we get full potential or full advantage of the session today. So I can't see my panel. I can see a few of you. Hi, guys. Yay. Hello. Okay. I'm wondering if Mulifi is on the call yet. Okay, well, he'll probably be on shortly. So to start the webinar, thank you very much for attending. I wanted us to have this discussion because I feel that a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, and most importantly, agencies in the industry do not see the importance of human capital. And I think it's because we don't understand the depth of human capital and the impact that it can have on business. Now, of course, it would be very typical of me to bring in HR folk onto my panel because we are the converted, we know what we do and we know we add value on a day-to-day basis. But the fact is, I wanted to talk to our business leads and I wanted to talk to people outside who are experiencing the human capital departments and how we work and how we show up. So I've got them on the panel. The first person that I want to introduce you to is Mulifi, but I can't find him. There he is.
Yes. Hello,
Mulifi.
I've been struggling with the video. I don't know what's going on, but it's fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for coming on.
Cool.
So I'll just like to introduce all of them so that you know who is on the panel and we can get into the discussion. So Mulifi is, he's currently the CEO and founder of a business called Avidity, the Avidity Group. And he was previously a CEO at Prime Media. This is all coming out of my head. I'm so impressed with myself. Of Prime Media. For quite a while, he was at Prime Media for quite some time.
You're the best ever. Please enjoy this. Who's this from? I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'm opening your gift.
Can we please go on mute? Thank you. And Mulifi will be joining us to give us more information of how he experiences human capital from a head of business perspective and what he found the benefits are of having human capital and why he feels we need human capital in a business. I've also got on the panel Wayne Naidu, who is currently the CEO and founder of Duke Group, the Duke Group, which is an agency based in Cape Town. Duke, I've got Wayne here to also give us a view on human capital in the industry, because he's also serving as the chairman of the ACA. So I think he is the right person to come and give us some perspective on where he feels human capital is in the industry and what we are missing, what we are needing, and where we could potentially go with human capital in the industry. I've got on the panel also Dave McCullough, who is my ex-colleague. I had to bring him in because we work together quite closely, and I wanted him to give a perspective or a view of how the transition actually for an organization that doesn't have HR to an organization that fully embraces HR and has HR at its core. And he'll be giving us more input on that. The next person that I've got on the panel is Ronnie Muladzi. He is currently the Chief Operations Officer at a company called Sakumnoto. I said it right, ne? Sakumnoto. And I asked Ronnie to join us because Ronnie actually started his career in human capital. And he worked in some really nice big organizations. So that set the foundation for him to understand and fully know how to implement human capital and HR within a business. But now he has transitioned into a different role, which is as a Chief Operations Officer. And I'd like him to, first of all, get into the detail of how the human capital positioned him to be able to take on the COO role. And then also what he feels is quite crucial because now he's got both sides of the coin. And the last person that I've got, I felt it was really important to bring on a marketer. And it's a person who has been our client for many of us for quite some time. I've got Andrea Quay on the panel. And Andrea has worked in many big organizations as a marketing exec. She's got years of experience as marketing, and I would like her experience I would like her to give us her experience on how she has experienced people from agency, and maybe even reiterate the reason why we should be pushing for human capital within the industry. What is it that she is receiving as a client, and how could we then, her advice on how we can better position our people to serve our clients better. Thank you so much, guys, and welcome. I'd like to start by asking Mulifi this question. Can you tell us what people practices are really important within a business to get right, and why do you think that is?
Okay, sorry for the video, guys. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I think the people piece is a very critical piece in any organization, because in order as a business to attain sustainable growth, it all starts with people. There's no matter we're in a digital era, some human being has to give instructions to an automated thing to make it function. Some human being has to put input into something, be that it's AI, be that it's anything. There's a human element in it. And I think to attain success in a business, the most critical piece is the culture. Every organization has a culture, and human capital plays a very important part in the development of that culture. And I think the most critical one is defining the values of that organization, because the values are the yeses and nos of the organization in terms of how it behaves, how it engages with itself, and how it engages with other people. And your existence as a business is centered around the purpose that why you exist. And the key part is that you want people in an organization that are able to comprehend that and understand that, understand where the organization is going. And I think human capital plays, as I said, a key part in the contribution and the crafting of that message and making that culture come alive. And I mean, it's not human capital's responsibility to make culture come alive, but they're the catalyst in helping to make it happen. I mean, the most critical part is being able to be coached as a CEO from a human capital perspective, where the subject matter expert sits with you and says, I get you, it makes sense, the numbers add up, but it's not the right thing to do where we are in the business. This is what the business has experienced. The second part is what you speak about, your ordinary transactional capital. I mean, human capital that you do. And the key part is being able to work with human capital to be able to bring on board the right people in the business. Try and come into a business and define it when it's big. Then you discover that a whole lot of people that are on board don't belong there. So it's key that when you begin your business, you have that in place. Human capital can help you do that. I mean, we used to apply, or we still do it, we call it the A-player rule, that the first thing is culture alignment when we hire anyone. If there's no culture alignment, the rest becomes, it's hopeless to do that. And being able to have the best people in the business, from ambition, qualified correctly, having experience. And I mean, experience, we used to say even the maintenance guy has to have experience, and more importantly, must have a network of anything. And all the other cues that you look at, be that it's emotional or adversity, that I think human capital plays a key role there. And three other points I'll cover. One is we now in an era where we want to be very efficient. Now, the second part is that we want to generate insights. So you need a human capital that's able to help you to adapt to the new forms of innovation that are in that space, to help you to become more efficient. I mean, if you look at your 360 review, performance management, process, which is, and when it's automated, it's much more even nicer, you know, where your boss puts in his input, the people who report to you put in their input, you put in your input, and voila, here's a report quickly, in no time, you're able to assess yourself, you're able to get a view of what people are saying about you. But in your day-to-day as a CEO, you're not going to be going around looking for the best software that can do that, or that can run all your other transactional processes at a finger of a button, you know. And I think the last part for me, it's the two last part is the performance part, that in order for you to achieve your ambitions as a business, human capital plays a key role in aligning expectations in terms of the ambition of the business and the ambition of staff. I learned one thing: retention and succession planning, especially succession planning, always happens. The question is, are you part of that conversation with that employee? Everybody is planning their next move, or what is important to them and what they're going to do. So you need human capital to help with that part of performance management, in helping the business align expectations so that you can retain staff, you're able to drive conversion. And lastly, it's the ability to human capital to assist in getting the business to drive repeatability and predictability. Because once there's a way of doing things, it ultimately results in an ability to be able to predict. And that's what's going to give you that competitive advantage in terms of being able to have your business to be agile in responding to stuff. So I think for me, human capital is key, very key to if you want to build a business and a high growth business. In my experience, we were able to achieve that when I was at Prime Media in the division that I headed, where there was an alignment in terms of human capital was at the table to have conversations with us about things relating to the business and being able to assist in bringing the people part into the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mulifi. That was very insightful, and it encompassed quite a lot of things that obviously human capital are responsible for. I want to ask the next question to Ronnie. So, Ronnie, we find that in the industry, there's quite a lot of pushback on bringing in human capital. Now, I want to ask you, how do we change the mindset of business owners to embrace human capital and to fully bring them into the boardroom where discussions are being had?
Thanks, Lebo. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm out in the mountains, so the connectivity here is a little shaky. Am I okay? All right, so I think your question around how do we bring HR onto the table, and I'm grateful that I started in HR and now I'm in operations in a way. And it's always been, I think, a question for most of the HR practitioners. I mean, I was in HR for 9 years, so it's a bulk of kind of my experience in corporate. And I'm very glad that I came on to work, for some very interesting organizations. And I think I saw Zani Mashinini earlier on. She was also, at SAB with me, including yourself as well. But I think finding that, there are organizations out there that have really structured that HR role at a strategic role or at a strategic level, and which then facilitates for human capital to become part of the business conversation. And I think that, in my notes as I was preparing for this, I was looking at and reflecting at kind of my transitions, from HR into the current role that I occupy, which is Chief Operations Officer. And there were actually 2 transitions that I think I had in my career. And the first transition was because I started out in consulting at PwC, learning very, very interesting skills there in terms of business consulting, coming to an organization, really becoming a fixer. This is where you are. This is where business strategy sits. This is where HR is. How do we create the link between the two? And so that was very interesting for me that I started there, and I'm thankful because there was not really time for me to learn any bad skills or bad habits as an HR practitioner. And so my career started out already, thinking strategically and how you partner with business to bring the two worlds together to ensure that, of course, the bottom line is achieved, which is really what we're trying to do in business. And so that was my first transition, coming out from consulting and then needing now to transition into an HR generalist role, which took a bit of time to do, and also took a little bit of adjusting for me, coming from a consulting background, dealing with projects, learning how real HR business partnership model actually really works, and then coming to an environment where I need now to get a hold of the more day-to-day operational HR experience and translate or marrying that with my strategic HR work that I'd been doing, which was more around managing change, developing projects that are going to be providing solutions to business in order for them to achieve their results. And so it was quite an interesting one. And so transitioning through all my roles, and finally finding myself in SAB, which I think for me, at the time was a flagship of HR practice for corporate, was quite an interesting transition for me to make. And it was easier also because I was used to having that strategic discussion. And so when I came in as a consultant, essentially. I didn't come as an HR generalist, and they were quite nervous about bringing me on board, coming from a consulting background, And at that time, I was very nervous around, the administrative, quite operational part of HR, where you're dealing with, labor relations, the leave forms, the employee relations, etc., with the managers, etc. And so I think it was quite an interesting, journey going into that role. But when I went in as a consultant, and already I had a seat at the table because of the nature of the organization, right? But being able then to go in and understanding that, okay, actually at SAB, it's a sales-driven environment, right? I've got sales managers that work and operate in different geographical areas. You can't have the same conversation with a sales manager that is managing a sales team in key accounts versus tavern market versus Shebeen market. And so those conversations are different, and how they drive results for the business is quite different. And so I think for me, that was the advantage that I had moving from quite a project-based consulting experience and coming into a generalist role in a sales environment. And so I think being able then to marry those two and understanding then how do I help my sales managers and my DM achieve the sales results that they need in the different GAs where they operate. And of course, the talent discussions are quite different. A sales rep in the tavern and Shebeen market, very different to how they operate in the key accounts market, and so you find that you've got that broad spectrum, and that the relationship was very direct. So you understand that, the talent discussion is actually a strategic discussion, because every single week, you report sales volumes on a Friday, and you know that if you don't have the right, say, field sales rep, Friday comes, that GA is going to be definitely down in volume. That is so the talent discussion driving a real business metric, which is what I think, at that time, SAB was able, I know I'm talking a lot about SAB, but I think it's just really one of those flagship organizations that really got the HR business partnership model. And I think a lot can be learned from it. So I'm not sure if I answered your question in a way level, but I think I'll stop there for now.
You answered that and more. Thank you very much. So my next question is to Wayne. With the understanding that quite a lot of human capital people have around the strategic impact that we can have on any business, really, why do you feel that in this industry there is an aversion to human capital in agency? Or is it an aversion, or what is it? What is your take on that?
Thanks, Lebo. So as you know, I'm no human capital specialist, so I'm going to give my opinion.
Yep.
And hopefully you'll review me properly after this.
No.
But I think the issue here is, human capital is critical, but I think it's misunderstood. I still refer to it as HR, and even that I don't fully understand. So, if you go back to just the basics, is that in the companies that I worked for across clients, multinationals, and now my own company, is that HR in my head, or human capital, was, I guess, getting the contracts right, looking at CVs, reviewing people against their KPIs, real basic stuff. And I'm talking about a mixture of different companies, from small shops all the way to a couple of hundred people. And that was my experience of it. The kind of thing that we engaged upon and that we're talking about right here goes obviously much, much deeper. And a lot of what I experienced was, a lot of that agenda was probably driven by the management, or certainly one person, the CEO, or in our case, the chief creative officer. And that was it, and kind of like, off you go. We work in a hard industry, and pull it together, and see you at the Christmas party. And be kind to clients, don't lose them. So those were the KPIs. And I think that there's a lot of work that probably the likes of you, me, the panel, people on this call would need to do. I mean, Lebo, you were asked to start the transformation, not the transformation, forgive me, the human capital portfolio within the ACA, and you were the only person in it. Which is crazy. And I think, again, that just proves the point. People, the CEOs, certainly the members of the ACA, they don't even know what that means themselves, and we're all running sizable companies. So the fact that I'm even on this call, I don't know what the representation is across the various participants, but I would imagine, again, you're talking mainly to the converted. So there's a massive job that would be required beyond this, and hopefully this is the start of it. But yeah, I think that if we could work beyond that, I mean, if you take the industry, the typical cost in an agency world anyway, 50 to 60% of the cost is staff related. I mean, our staff are everything. That's it. It's all about people, If you don't get that right, we don't have a business. So it's quite interesting that most of the companies that I've been exposed to We never had people driving this agenda as a proper portfolio. You know, like you would have an IT guy looking after the computers because it made up a substantial part of your business. We just don't have it, which is crazy. And then, I mean, as part of that, again, I'm sure that the bigger multinational companies are doing some form of, you know, training, some form of succession planning, some form. I use that lightly because I don't quite know what that means. And if it was that robust, why are so many people still leaving the industry? You know, if you look at the other sectors, fintech and IT, as I mentioned, those are buoyant industries. Is it pay related? I don't know. I mean, this industry was always a tease, but it was a kind of a calling at one point, wasn't it? You know, you never got into the industry because of the money. There was something special about it. And I think we've lost a lot of that magic. I think it's become hell of a transactional. It's become a lot about pleasing the higher powers on meeting your profit margin, I guess, like most businesses. But the magic has disappeared somewhat. So I think that we need to get into a place where we revisit that, and there needs to be people that are driving that agenda. Yeah, that's some of my top line thoughts for now.
And I guess it is for the business owners to trust that the HR people can bring the magic, right?
Of course.
Okay. Andrea, the next question is for you. I'd like to find out from you, having sat on the client side, what impact did you experience from the lack of human capital in agency, if any?
Okay, thank you very much, Label. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to represent clients, but from my perspective, once again. I'm sure there are many other different views. But just to start off, I really would like to agree with what Wayne was talking about. You know, when I look at my relationship with my agencies, I am buying the people, I'm buying ideas, I'm buying experiences. My agencies don't produce beer, they don't make cars. And if you look at the corporate world and you look at how much care is taken with whatever we produce and whatever we sell, I would like to see the same thing happening from an agency perspective. Because not only are ideas and people what we buy, the majority of your costs, and I didn't know it was as low as 50%, I actually thought it was higher. The majority of your costs are actually business related. I mean, people related. And if I look at, and it's a pity that such an important asset, and I think it's so much more important for agencies than it is for any other business, because it's the only asset you have. It is so sad that isn't given the level of importance and the focus that is required. And as Malife was saying, you know, human capital, HR, people are the people that set up the processes, the systems that help us as line managers make sure that we get the most out of our people. Because what ends up happening when you don't have human capital, HR people, is that, you know, people expect the cream to rise to the top. And often the cream is one-dimensional. The cream is the person that thinks like the boss, that thinks like the MD. You know, those are the ones that will naturally come up. But if you're looking for ideas, and the best ideas come from diverse teams, you need to make sure that you're developing, you're recruiting, you're promoting different people. And to take the subjectivity out of it, you need human capital. So that is my rant about human capital. My experience is that as clients, we end up getting very attached to people. I don't like there will be some people I absolutely want to work in my account and others that I won't, because I know that one, there will be a connection, but two, that person will deliver. And it's such a pity when somebody doesn't work well on the account, they get moved on to another account. They're not necessarily coached on the job. They're not necessarily given the right level of training to really progress. So what ends up happening is you end up staying with one person because you know that one person is going to give you what you want. Mm-hmm. And we complain a lot about, you know, talent moving from agency to agency, and it's no surprise. You know, I think it's no longer about the calling, as Wayne talks about it. It ends up being about the money, because you want to feel valued, and at the moment, the only way of being valued is the amount of money somebody's willing to pay for you, and it's a spiral. Yeah, so that's really my perspective and my experience on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. I'd like to ask Dave. I think Dave is having a challenge with his video. Sorry about that, Dave. So I'm going to ask you the question anyway. So having been in an organization that initially didn't have human capital to one where you literally were part of the transition into one where you're fully, you're fine. So into one organization that is completely human capital driven, with human capital sitting in the boardroom and contributing. What was that like for you? And yeah, take us through the transition and the importance that you now see from having human capital in a business.
Cool, thanks, Lebs. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of the panel, and just quickly to say hi to a couple of old friends out there. I see, Rick is here as well, and happy birthday to Rika today. Malope, nice to see you there, and Zani as well. Cool, Leb. So yeah, I think you know, we brought you on board at Joe Public fairly soon after I arrived. The business was starting to go through quite a growth trajectory, and we didn't have any person heading up the HR or human capital function in the business. We were pretty directionless when it came to looking after people. I think there was a level of skepticism initially in terms of why we had to employ such a senior person to look after people. And I think that was just possibly an aftermath of coming out of a multinational environment at FCB, where maybe human capital wasn't at the forefront for the then founders of the business potentially. So, you know, I think there was a need to justify it, and to justify it often meant metrics and measurements. And once those metrics and measurements started to come to the table in the boardroom, they started to raise a lot of questions, a lot of debate, and a lot of robustness in terms of the discussions that happened around the table. And I think those robust discussions ultimately led to better decision making and helped with strategy. But it was an initial sort of hesitancy in terms of why we needed to have such a person at the table. But it was also then easier to justify when as a business, as Joe Public, we had a purpose at the core of the business, which was growth. And it was at that stage, growth of our clients, our people, and country was the order of our purpose. And as we went through the years, started to realize that we needed to measure our staff not only from a performance point of view, but from a happiness point of view or from an engagement level point of view. And as Andrea was saying, you know, we employ people to come up with creative ideas. Now, a salary doesn't just do that for you, actually. You need to be switched on. It's like people are resources, but if you're calling them capital, that means they're an asset. And an asset is something that's normally sitting on your balance sheet. And an asset is something that you normally take care of. Like your house is an asset, your car is an asset. Investment portfolios are assets. And any asset you generally want to maintain and grow. So if you're going to look at your people as assets and call them assets, then treat them like assets, I guess. Don't just pay them a salary every month. Check in with them. You know, you need when you're driving a car, if it's an asset, you've got a dashboard and it's got all these lights that flash. It's got a speedometer that tells you you're going too fast, or you're over the speed limit, or you need to put in oil, or it's time for a service. In order to look after your people as assets, you also need to have those kind of metrics in place to know if they're okay. The salary every month at the end of the month doesn't necessarily mean they're okay. So what we started finding is that what human capital brought to the table is those kind of measurements and metrics where we could assess how our people are doing. We could assess talent. We could put people into talent matrix. And when you start measuring those different metrics besides a salary and just a performance against KPIs, you start getting a more switched on and engaged workforce. And the benefit of having a switched on and engaged workforce or capital means that you start delivering better work to your clients. And when you start doing that, your clients are prepared to pay you more potentially because the work is better, because it's shifting their business. And if your clients are paying you better, you start being able to reward your staff. And it doesn't always have to be monetary. It can be with training. The other thing we discovered is that with these metrics and measurements and discussions around assessing our engagement levels of staff, it started to unearth and almost hold a mirror to us as leadership or senior leadership in the business, because a lot of the questions you ask your employees about are they happy? Do they feel rewarded? Do they feel respected? Do they have an opportunity to express themselves? Most of the questions you ask them are actually influenced by their managers. So by having human capital in the business, what we started to unearth is that us as leaders actually had room for growth. We as leadership needed to develop ourselves in terms of our leadership and management skills. And so that took us on a whole leadership development journey. We spent millions of rands over a couple of years in investing in our leadership. And once the leadership starts becoming better managers of their assets, their people, you start turning around the engagement levels of those people. And so, yeah, it becomes a virtuous circle of growth, if you like, when you're looking after your leaders and your leaders are looking after your employees and your employees are looking after your clients. It all starts resulting in a better bottom line eventually. So it also forced us to stop looking at the bottom line. We started looking at our people and our product, focusing on that rather than focusing on the bottom line. And then once you start doing that, the bottom line starts taking care of itself. So that was all, I think, massive learnings and a benefit to us as a business by having human capital at the boardroom table.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that, Dave. Mulifi, the next question is for you. As a CEO who's run quite a big organization, I'm talking specifically around Prime Media. I know that you definitely had a strategic partner in your human capital there. And I'd like to find out from you, in your view, it's easy to bring in a human capital resource within the organization or a specialist. However, how important is it to have a human capital professional who sits at the table in the boardrooms and who can engage with you on the discussions that the business is engaging on?
Look, I think on a few aspects. Firstly is I'm a strong believer in the foundation, those pillars that creates the foundation of the business, the values, the purpose, the vision. And having worked in an organization that we were driven by high growth. So if for you, we've got a philosophy that I call the compound growth philosophy. My belief is that you should grow at between 12.5% and 15% compound growth in PBIT to have a great business. Because every 5 years, your business doubles. Now, when your business doubles every 5 years, no one goes anywhere because there's always growth, new positions in place. Your entire stakeholder value chain believes in you. Now, the alignment of the ability to have an engaged team sits behind that compound growth. So it's very key to have human capital at the table in two capacities. Capacity one, being involved in crafting those yearly or the 5-yearly or the 3-yearly objectives. Having input and owning it as an executive. That's the first step. The second part is them understanding the role of what human capital role is. So it's very difficult for you to say to somebody, we're going to grow at 15%, we're going to set up a new business, I need someone. So the person needs to understand that if we do not get the right person, what is that impact on having the wrong person delivering the wrong number over a 5-year period? So if human capital is not at the table to be able to comprehend consequence of their actions, 1, 2, and also being able to say, guys, you guys are smoking something. This is not achievable. Or the person you are marking from a succession plan point of view is the wrong person. There was a time we appointed 3 sales managers where there was a new layer of sales managers was created. We appointed 3. The top selling person didn't get the job and was very upset. But we were able to show to the person the psychometric test and a whole lot of other things to say, these are the reasons why you didn't qualify. So in terms of your growth, okay, this is what you need to do. And here are the new opportunities that are coming in the next 3 years or the next 2 years that you could participate in. Now the person starts to say, I'm frustrated. I understand why I didn't get the job. I know what to do. There's a future for me to be here. So if you look at that, it's because human capital sits at the table. The other part is your entire stakeholder management starts with your staff. I always say that the team is the most important piece, people, so they need to be, that's the first part. The team has an impact on how you respond to government in terms of regulation, because government is number 2. If you don't respond to government, they shut you down. 3, it's the people that give you rights to exist as a business, okay? 4 is your customers. 5, your suppliers, how you participate in the industry that you're in. How do you have an impact in the community? And then how do you deliver those sustainable distributions and growth to shareholders? Now, in the era we're in right now, customer experience has become the differentiator now. Okay, and it's driven by a whole lot of other aspects that people are saying are going more for customer experience than price and a whole lot of things. And bulk of customer experience is driven by people. So imagine when you are having challenges in being able to fulfill a lot of things and your human capital is not sitting at the table. One big telco company, 2 examples I'm going to give you. One big telco company decided to move the insurance for handsets to another company to run. That company could not process claims. They couldn't answer your call for probably for a period of 3 to 4 months. And somebody took a decision in terms of, from a financial gain point of view, or a cost cutting, took a decision and said, guys, we don't need this, we can outsource it. So the question is, where was human capital in that dialogue to say, I disagree. I think we're actually going to deliver a bad customer experience because cost saving is centered around people. The second part is that we saw one e-commerce platform a couple of weeks or a month ago lose customers. And it was a purely on a human capital aspect, because the CEO took a position against Black Lives Matter. The staff decided to take that message external. And people who had customers shut down their accounts. So where was human capital for the CEO to go to the human capital and says, we've got this challenge. How do we address it? It was an internal matter that was badly managed that spilled over to customers. At its center, it's about managing those expectations around people. As I can't remember which one of the speakers said, it's not longer about the paycheck. People are concerned about your social and your global consciousness. So where is human capital to help coach the CEO, coach the executives to say, guys, this is a very sensitive aspect that we should be. This is how I suggest we address it. And I think we need to be sincere in how we address it. If we don't, there's probably a backlash that's going to come out of here. So that's why you need human capital to be at the table and not be accommodated at the table, to be present equally as every other parts of the business that are seen as critical. That's my view, that if you want to achieve greatness, it's people are behind it, and that's why you should have human capital at the table.
Thank you very much, Mugifi. That was very interesting, and I think you encompassed a lot in that. I want to touch on what you just now said. Human capital mustn't be accommodated at the table. Now, we are finding, I'm sure a lot of human capital specialists or professionals on this call identify with this, where very many companies expect the human capital professional to either report into the finance director or to report into operations, or sometimes to just, find your way, just reporting to someone, just not the CEO. So Ronnie, I've got this question is for you. Can you articulate for me the importance of having human capital reporting into the CEO? And in your answer, I would actually like you to begin the answer with explaining what holding up the mirror is. So when human capital professionals hold up the mirror, what is that? And then we can get into why you think that they need to report into CEO.
Thanks, Lebo, for that question. I think it's a big question, and it's an uncomfortable one, I think, in most cases, especially for human capital practitioners in terms of holding up the mirror. Because already, I suppose, human capital is really looked at as a soft, part of the business, not hard enough. It's not driving, I suppose, the bottom line as most people would see it, but we know differently, of course. And so maybe I'll answer that question by giving you a practical example, because I think theory is, we study in school. But, in one of my roles, I remember sales-driven as well. I remember we came into a meeting and the team hadn't met their sales targets 3 weeks in a row. And we came into a ManCo. Of course, the director in charge of the region was up in arms, fairly so. Okay, you are not meeting your targets. You know that in a week's time I need to report, to the GM regional, and so what am I going to say? So that's how the conversation starts, and it escalates to the point where insults are being hurled, swear words are being thrown around, across the room. No one is being given a chance to say anything, and literally that was the whole thing. The rant continued for 15 minutes. Director slammed the door on his way out, and we were all left sitting there wondering what on earth just happened. And at that time, of course, you want to kind of make sure that you play that advocacy role, role as an HR practitioner quite well. and demonstrate that you understand the importance of the discussion that he was trying to have with the team, right? But say to him, was that the right way really to get your message across? You know, so in that moment I thought, okay, this is going to be very interesting. This is one of those that I really haven't had in a long time. I think personally, as part of this ManCo, I'm feeling aggrieved, of course, you know, being talked down to, like we're children, we've just been called the principal's office and etc. So I called my boss at that time, was a HR director regional, and I said, look, if suddenly your colleague calls you and tells you to recall me from this region, you must just know that I've had a difficult conversation with him, and I'm going to have it with him. And at this time, this is a guy that used to, and interestingly enough, which I think speaks to what Molefe was talking about as well, is that this was a guy that also had come from an HR background in the business and had transitioned into a sales role as a director in the business. You know, so you'd have expected that he probably has a very good grasp and understanding of how to have difficult conversations, but still be able to extract you know, the best in people in order for them to go back into the field and still deliver the results, you know. But it wasn't the case. At that time, I'm sure he was just thinking, you know what, next week Friday, I'm not going to be able to report positive results. I'm going to be that region that is tracking, you know, the last in the scorecard. And so I don't want that, and I want everybody out of here. So literally the last words were, everybody back into the, you know, into your roles, into the field, and I want this changed now. But after insults were hurled and everything. So, I mean, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for him. And at that time, I was still very, very, I know I still look very young, but I was still really quite young. I was in my mid-20s at that time, and he was much more senior, a lot more experienced in that business. And I thought, you know what, I'm going for him, and we're going to have a hard conversation around what just happened. Because yes, we understand that, you know, results have to be delivered, but is that the right way to give feedback that then allows you know, people to go back into their different functional areas and still be able to feel human, you know, because that's really what I thought had gone wrong in that conversation. So I went and I said, you know what, that meeting did not go well at all. I firstly appreciate where you're coming from in terms of the team having not delivered the results, but the manner in which you have approached and addressed that matter has left the whole team feeling completely worthless. And so how do you expect that these guys are going to go back into the field and still be effective? And just by the way, do you know that, you know, all the salespeople in this region will avoid walking past your office, anywhere near your office? They will make sure that they will avoid, not even, they don't want to be seen walking past your door. Now, how do you expect then that you're going to be a high-performing region and have commitment and full engagement? Because people will do anything for you when they feel fully engaged and they feel fully committed to you, and they feel that they're respected as human beings and that their dignity is maintained intact, and that they can go back into the field and still, you know, and still push for you. So that was a very difficult conversation to have. He had never had anyone, especially not an HR practitioner, come to him and confront him. And so that behavior had gone on for quite a while. And I mean, the sales managers were just like, Ronnie, are you sure you're going to do this? I said, I'm going to do it because it's important for you and it's important for business. You know, there is no way that we're going to turn around the performance of this region if this is the kind of leadership that we're going to accept. And you guys have accepted it for a long time because, you know, it's just the way that things have gone. But unfortunately now I'm here and I will not accept it. And so I went and I had that conversation. And long story short, from that day on, trust me, the behavior changed. Of course, it was a journey, right? And we, of course, had different interventions for him, the leadership team, etc. And but things changed. The sales team started to feel a lot more valued. The results changed, And there was no need now to be swearing and hurling insults across rooms and walking out and banging doors, etc. So I think it just goes to show that, as HR practitioners, as much as we're addressing human behavior in the organization, and sometimes it's viewed as not as hard, as a guy that's driving the financials in the business, that conversation is just as important to turn that business around and make sure that the financial performance is actually achieved. So I think I'll stop there, Lebo. I don't know if I answered both. I think that was the one aspect around, how do you hold the mirror up? It's not an easy conversation to have sometimes, but very, very essential and necessary for us to have it. And they might not like you, but the thing is, we're not there to be liked by, by our business leaders. We're there to make sure that they can remain human as much as they're still trying to drive results for business.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the last part was really crucial. We've got a question, a really nice question on the chat group, and I actually want to give this to Andrea, because I feel that okay, we're working with our industry, and I want Andrea to respond specifically from our industry perspective, the marketing side of things. So the question is around today's environment where speed, efficiency is key, and businesses are pushing volume transactions, and organizations prefer operating systems that are fast and that are fast replacing people. So can we really say that HR is still a critical core function in businesses, and how do we motivate its existence and relevance to the board? You're on mute.
Story of my life. Thank you, Desiree, and thank you, Lebo, for chucking that one on me. Cool. Because in a way, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I believe that it's not about reducing the number of, people. It's about changing the skill set. So what we're seeing in organizations is that new skills are required. The fourth industrial revolution has arrived. If I look at, as a marketeer, my upbringing was a very brand building upbringing, Unilever, SAB. So I see this is a little bit of an SAB reunion here. But, we were taught how to position brands, how to bring these ideas to life, and how to execute them in market. And now, as marketers, what we are being asked to do is to unlock growth. And the unlocking of growth has got to do with us building capabilities in big data, because big data is what's going to tell us what the future is going to be like. So if there is no HR to actually say, these are the capabilities that are going to be required in the future, these are the capabilities that exist in my organization, this is how, one, I'm going to import these capabilities, or I'm going to train the people in my organization to get there. Who will do it? The CEO won't do it. This is an HR function. And, Ronald, you talked about soft skills, and I learned something from my daughter's school. When they talk about people management and EQ, they call it power skills. Because at the end of the day, if you've got engaged students or engaged people that are confident, that are driven to achieve great things, that is real power. And I strongly believe that yes, there is automation and people are going to be impacted, but it's going to be the people that are, one, potentially less educated, but as there's a beautiful quote that I saw, that says, the literate people of the future are not the people that don't know how to read and write. They're the people that don't know how to unlearn, to learn, and to relearn. And that is what HR needs to bring to the table. I find sometimes, and you were talking about looking in the mirror, and I'm sure there are lots of HR practitioners here, so I'm going to throw a little cat in the pigeon here. I find sometimes a lot of human capital practitioners too specialized and too into the process and into the law and into the that, rather than being customer focused and understanding the customer, which is the business. What does the customer need, and how can I enable and use my skills in terms of capabilities, people, organization, and all of that? How can I use those skills to enable the business? Yeah, so in short, I believe that there is, now more than ever, there is a role for human capital, for HR. I believe that that role has changed. And yeah, and I believe there's huge opportunity for those that want to grab it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that response. Wayne, back into the industry. So I would like to find out from you, okay, when I came into the industry, I experienced quite a lot of pushback from my engagement with the rest of the staff. And the pushback was based on the fact that human capital was seen as a stick, or was used as a stick, rather than somebody who's coming in to engage and to collaborate. In your view, how do we remove that perception in the industry of having human capital existing as a stick rather than a business partner to an agency?
Well, I loved what Andrea said at the end, and I completely agree with my limited engagement with the HR people that I've dealt with. It always felt like you were told what you couldn't do, right? So you were like, if you do that, you're going to get yourself into trouble. There was always this legal aspect to it, and it was like, whoa, best I stay away, because at the best of times you'll probably get locked up in advertising. So I think there's always been this thing to bypass HR. It was always, you know, have you done? It was always the parent-child kind of relationship. And again, you know, how do you get that? That doesn't work in advertising, does it? The minute that you put that kind of pressure on people, you know what's going to happen. So I like the idea in terms of, how do I gear you up for the unknown? How do I gear you up? We know big data is massive. How do we unlock potential in business? I think that's definitely where it needs to go. But there's a couple of components that I think where it can help in just look at where we're sitting right now. We're on Zoom because we can't do this face to face, right? COVID, help. I mean, I literally been making this up on a day-to-day basis within our company. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? That's where HR, human capital, absolutely would have offered massive value. We haven't taken the lead. This is a golden opportunity within the industry to have taken the lead and said, how about this, right? Even if we do it in phases as an example, nobody knows. So I think that's where massive value could have been added. Another massive issue that I kind of think that we need to be driving is protecting our staff from what I call bullying, client bullying, professional bullying, right? I mean, it's a massive thing within the industry. People, they have to just suck it up, otherwise you're going to lose the account. So and people basically just wither away and disappear out of the industry. The client isn't being brought into question. We're just going to have to hang on to the account. So it's all of those kind of things. It's never ever been addressed. You know, is there a labor component to that needs to be brought in? Is there a different manner in which we can do it? We're all seeking the same outcome, I guess. So how do we protect our people? How do we make them feel safe? How do we make them feel that they can become a better version of themselves? We read about this all the time, but you know, as leaders, we need to be able to be walking the talk and being able to stand up to those kind of issues massively. You know, we talk about things like gender-based violence. I mean, what are we doing about it? It's great doing the hashtags, it's great doing all of these discussions, but we haven't done a single thing about this thing. You know, we've got sexual misconduct issues within the industry rampant that we know about, right? And in fact, when I say the industry, I'm talking both on client and agency side. So this is me just talking loosely. And look, I've already come up with a handful of things, you know. So when you say what can be done, I mean, take any one of them. Even if you just suggest one of them and you did it 50% of the way, we'll be way ahead of where we are right now. So I think it is a demonstration in terms of those are the kind of things that could be tackled properly. And remember, these are ongoing discussions and ongoing programs. This is not something that you're going to be able to solve overnight, but we haven't started, or I certainly don't think we've started. And again, giving guidance to everybody within the industry to show that we are doing something about it. So again, you know, I mean, you've opened up the discussion, you've opened up my mind to it. And when you give it some thought to it, you go, geez, okay, that's awesome. Can somebody, you mean we can actually get somebody that can handle that for us? I'm like, that's amazing. I'll do that tomorrow. Right? Because we all need a champion that can drive that within our companies. It's not because we're against it. We just didn't know that that is what you do. So maybe there's something in that, some food for thought.
I think it is around the question that I asked you earlier on the aversion to human capital. I think the heads of business don't quite know what to expect from a human capital professional, so they don't deal with them when they land on their doorstep.
Yep.
Dave, the question that is on the chat session section, I'd like to give it to you. So I don't know if you guys have done anything special. I have. I'm joking. So I don't know how you guys are handling this whole pandemic and how you're dealing with performance management in your organization. If you have done anything, would you mind sharing with me how you are managing performance management with people working from home and ensuring that our staff or your staff deliver?
Sure, that's a little tough question for me. I'd almost want to put Rika on the line here, but I guess it's up to me to answer that one. Look, I think first and foremost, we've taken a very empathetic approach, very much supportive of the staff initially. I mean, it's a major thing that the world is going through, not only the country and not only our industry. So yeah, it's a massive thing, and so we've taken empathetic approach to the staff, making sure that they are okay on a daily basis, almost from a manager point of view. So the managers are tasked to check in with their teams on a very regular basis, and that check-in is not only to make sure they're doing their work. You know, we are an output-based business or industry, if you like. So we've stepped away from clock watching and more managing the output of people. And because our businesses have all become so lean due to pressures on costs and fees, etc., over the last, say, decade, there's no room to move. If you're an individual in a business and you're not delivering an output, you're going to get caught out very quickly. So I don't think ad agencies have the luxuries of big corporates where sometimes you can hide in a big 50,000 strong organization. So if you're taking an approach based on output, you can allow flexibility. And so, you know, making sure everyone's got data and can work from home, we can certainly do that. That's not difficult to do. Then it's checking in on a regular basis, and the check-in, like I said, is the work going to get out the system? You know, that's possible. It's more a case of, are you okay? Do you need anything? And we're finding that approach is really getting the positive support from the staff. So we operating, well, as Joe Public, we seem to be operating very efficiently from home. Everyone seems to be actually almost more engaged in this process. We've kind of banded together as a family. We continue to do our monthly staff functions virtually, and yeah, I think but having said that, I think the role of human capital is even more important right now to us as a business than it ever was. So the strategic role, the comforter, that's the approach, and we've seen positive results out of that, rather than, you know, being a stick behind people during this, and more, you know, almost taking the approach, are you working because you're working from home? We've sort of turned it on its head a bit.
Yeah. Thank you. I think just to layer in also on that, I think in my view, having worked in quite a number of industries, I find that in this industry in itself, we've been focused on delivering the outcome. It's not just about, you know, the time in front of the computer. the result or the final product is what matters the most within the right time. So I think it has made it a bit easier for people who've transitioned into working from home rather than working in the office. It's been happening, essentially. That's what I'm saying. I think that sums up all my questions that I've got. So we scheduled enough time for us. I'd like some closing comments from all of you. I'd like to start with Molefi, of course. So to close off the discussion, what do you think is the most important thing that people can walk away with from this webinar today?
I think what's key is really being able to comprehend the impact of human capital, not HR, people in your organization, and actually analyze and say, what do these people mean to my existence today? What do these people mean to my growth? And I'll speak more from an agency point of view, that people are what creates your competitive advantage. You may regard them as not necessarily your competitive advantage, but they're the ones who create it. Okay? And for a locally based agency, I think that's all you have. And I think if you're part of a global network, I think that's what's going to create your relevance in the network. Your people will create the relevance. I mean, it's quite tough a friend of mine owned quite a large agency and they won accounts, and he said to me, don't you want to become the CEO? And I said, no. I don't like the margins of your industry. And the other part is, I don't like being in a commoditized environment. But there's another friend who runs a media agency, which is linked global. He realized that his growth was going to sit in digital because of the margins that they charge on digital. Okay? So what he did, he then put emphasis in that space. And what he appreciated about digital was that it's measurable. So he then started speaking to customers or clients where they use digital to drive performance. And he said to the client, for you to sell this product against what you're spending on media, you are getting a return of 30 Rand per sale. And then at some point that dropped to 3 Rand a sale in terms of the cost. And when I asked him the same question once a year. When I asked him last year, he said it's costing them 1.45 Rand. Okay, 5 cents to do it. But how did he get there? He took the entire staff of the agency, entire receptionist, cleaner, everybody, and went and trained them on what digital is. They went a weekend away and he says, I need the staff to comprehend this and understand that this is our future. Now, Andrea spoke about repurposing. They've repurposed. When I spoke to him last year, 45% of the staff in the agency were digital staff. So if you are driven to create growth and you think you can create growth outside people, all I'm going to say is that you will probably you'll always be changing your strategy every year and year out. But if you take the people part and become very clear and say, in the next 3 years, I need to deliver a compound growth of X. That's what I need to do. And the only way you could do it is the people agenda is at the heart of any business, not the investor, it's not the product, it's the people, because everything else comes from people. So you have to put the people agenda at the center of your organization. That's for growth. People are at the core. are your nucleus. That's my take.
Thank you, Malifi. Wayne, any closing comments?
Yeah, listen, it's clearly a no-brainer. I think it's a critical component. I think that what Malifi said is spot on.
Yeah.
People are your everything. They build the culture. You know, it also reminds me of the whole Good to Great book by Jim Collins. You know, we need it more now than ever. We don't know what the future holds. And we need again, I feel that we need a champion. We need somebody that can remind us. And it also feels like kind of what marketing was, you know, at one point, which was the poor cousin within businesses. Kind of feels that HR suffers with, unfortunately, with the same kind of ailment. And I somehow suspect that there's a lot of work that human capital has to do. It probably needs to advertise itself a bit better, you know. Again, the kind of things that you're talking about needs to extend way beyond this forum. Again, as we know, this is a start, but people just don't know this. Well, I certainly didn't. The extent to which it can go. So well done to you, Lebo, for being the catalyst to this. And yeah, hopefully we can get a few more CEOs and other business leaders on next time.
We will. I'll be hosting more webinars on specifically human capital. So hopefully more CEOs will want to sit and be questioned by me. Ronnie, closing comment?
Thank you very much, Lebo, and thank you again for the invitation to be a part of this conversation. And maybe my closing remarks are that, you know, I've been privileged, I guess, having sat on both sides of the coin. And currently, as a chief operating officer, I mean, my key pain points are that, you know, first of all, I need to drive strategy, but also need to make sure that that strategy is adaptable. We spoke about the fact that we're currently experiencing COVID-19. We had to do a lot of adaptation of our strategy. Funny enough, you know, that came, you know, 3 months after we had just, you know, sealed the ribbon around it and board approved it, and then COVID happens, and then all your revenue targets that you had forecast fall through fly through the window, and then you have to now re-establish your position and say, okay, how do we then move forward in the current environment? So those are, you know, some of the things that, you know, I worry about. And of course, you know, solving problems. You know, I'm a fixer. And so what I need from human capital, and having been on the other side as well, is someone that's going to help me do that. Someone that's going to understand that, okay, things have changed, the environment has changed. And so how do we repurpose, how do we realign, and how do we still then execute on our strategy and what we have set out to do. If it means we're establishing new lines to have new revenue coming through the business, we need to do that. And then how do you support me in doing that? And, you know, and so the last 4 months, we've established 3 new business units, you know, and it's been quite an interesting journey, you know, just finding also, you know, talent to run those businesses in an environment where you can't actually do an interview physically with someone at the, you know, as well. So you need someone that can partner with you in that process to ensure that you can match the right skill, the right talent with the right outcome that you're trying to achieve business-wise. And so I think for me, that is the most important thing, that, you know, human capital must provide solutions and not put, like what Wayne said, you know, robots in front of me as a business leader. Because I actually do know what those robots are and, you know, what's going to happen if I, you know, fall through. But the thing is, I need a human capital partner who's going to come and say, okay, this is what we need to do. Potentially there's the risk here, but we can work around this risk in this way and mitigate it, you know. And so I think human capital needs to provide real solutions that are aligned to what business is trying to achieve. And I think that way you're going to find a really good alignment, and there's going to be synergy between the two. So I think, thank you very much. I think I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that, you know, we've been able to shed some light somewhere.
Thank you. Hope some people have been converted. Let's hope. We stay in hope. Dave, any last comments?
Lebs, thanks for having me on the panel. It's been great to be here. I'll just maybe end with a bit of an analogy. I think if you look at your human capital as assets, you could compare them to flowers, and you need to water your flowers, and the water is like the salary you pay them. But just by watering a flower doesn't mean it's going to grow. You need to provide a fertile soil, which is the environment that you create for your flowers to grow in your organizations. And I think it's human capital that helps play that role in terms of advising strategically on how to develop and build that fertile soil for the flowers to grow.
Thank you, Dave. That's really sweet. Last but definitely not least, Andrea.
As they say, what's it? Age before beauty. This is the first time that it's happened to me. So I assume, well, you know, I thought, you know, my last thoughts would be to the HR practitioners in the group. And it would be 3 points, very practical points. I think the first thing is really check yourself, check your capabilities, check whether you are doing the roadblock thing or whether you're enabling. So I think and identify those gaps and go and close them. If you are an HR person or a human capital person that has only done that, do something else, do an MBA, do something else to better understand business. The second thing I would recommend is find an ally. It might not be the CEO, it might be the CFO, it might be the chief creative officer. Find an ally that you can work with and that you can prove your value with. And then the last one is show and share success stories, because people love looking over the pond. And I mean, just listening to what Dave has been talking about and what he's done at Joe Public with the leadership team, you can see it. You can see the results. They are the most transformed organization. You can see that there has been some method in the way in which they've gotten to where they've gotten to. So talk more about those success stories, and people will be looking over the pond and saying, I want me some of that. And then you roll up the HR practitioner, like, look, you can have it too. So yeah, I suppose that would be my advice. Thank you, Lebo, for inviting me. Yeah, and thank you everyone for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my panel, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today. I was extremely nervous at the beginning of this webinar, but I think it went really, really well. Thank you so much for all your contributions and for the questions. Desiree's questions, you were the only one who asked questions. I assume we were clear to everyone else. I will be having more webinars specifically talking about human capital in the industry. So please look out for those. We'll have invites, we'll send out invites. I'm still trying to wangle Mate's arm to have them monthly rather than quarterly. I'm hoping we can have them monthly, Mate, so we can spread the word and talk about human capital. But thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you at the next one, hopefully in a month. Mate? I'm looking at her. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Lebo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
The conversations can happen. You know, I'm easy.
Thank you, Mate. I will be having a conversation with you soon.
Okay, bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much, Lebo.
Cheers, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you, Lebo.